So good afternoon and welcome to today's debate. As many of you know, Rotary Club 21 has a decades-long tradition of hosting political debates between candidates seeking public office, or as in this case, the pros and cons of ballot measures. This has been done as a community service to help citizens make informed choices. Our debate today is on Spokane County Ballot Measure 1. Representing different perspectives are Sheriff John Knowles and Commissioner Chris Jordan. Thank you both for participating. Rotary's policies and procedures during the debate are as follows, so please pay attention. Reuse of any portion of footage or images from this debate is strictly prohibited without the written consent of Rotary 21. Use of cameras and recording devices are not allowed during the debate other than by authorized media outlets. Applause or outward expressions of agreement or disagreement are not allowed during the debate. We ask all Rotary members, guests, and campaigns to avoid negative social media during or after the debate. Debate questions are from Rotary Club 21 members, screened by the debate committee, and selected by the moderator. The questions have not been provided to the debate participants in advance. Prior to the debate, we had a coin flip to determine the order of speaking for opening and closing statements. Today, Commissioner Jordan will have the first opening statement, followed by Sheriff Knowles, and at the end, Commissioner Jordan will also close first, followed by Sheriff Knowles. Each candidate will be given a 1.5-minute opening and a 1.5-minute closing statement. Following the opening, we will begin with the debate questions, alternating who responds first. The first responder gets 1.5 minutes to respond, and followed by a 45-second rebuttal. Our timer, John Driscoll, will signal when 30 seconds is up in your response time, and then the final signal when your time has ended. At that point, please complete your final sentence, and I'll move to the next question. A time penalty will be assessed for not stopping on time. Each candidate also has been given a 1-minute wild card. They can use any time by notifying the moderator at the end of a segment. It can be used to clarify an issue or position, or it can be used to extend their closing remarks. As the moderator, I may press for a more direct answer if need be. So to set the stage, according to Spokane County Voter Guide, measure number 1 is 0.2% sales and use tax for criminal justice, public safety, correctional infrastructure, and behavioral health purposes. If approved, the county may impose an additional 0.2% countywide sales and use tax commencing April 1st, 2024 and terminating December 31st, 2054 to be used by the county and cities and towns within Spokane County for criminal justice, public safety, and behavioral health purposes, including building and improving jails or correctional facilities. So before we begin, since this is your last time to make any noise before the closing statements, please give us a round of applause for our two gentlemen that are joining us today. Would it be more comfortable if I were further out, or is it okay if I'm here?
That's up to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, okay. All right. So, gentlemen, are you ready?
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay. Commissioner Jordan, you have the first opening statement. Is my timer ready? Okay, good. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, thank you to Rotary 21 for having us today for this important conversation. Thank you, Sheriff Knowles, for joining me for this today. I wanted to say also thank you for your recent leadership in reaction to the fires we've had here in Spokane County. And I just want to ask everyone to join me in thanking the sheriff, our first responders, and everybody who's helped with the response efforts. Thank you. I do want to say that I'm here speaking for myself as an individual, not here on behalf of the county. Yeah, sure. not here on behalf of the county. I'm sure that's the same for Sheriff Knowles today. Just to briefly introduce myself, newly elected county commissioner serving District 1 in Spokane, and before I ran for office, I dedicated my career to 7 years as an assistant attorney general here in Spokane, working on child safety cases. So that's partnering with law enforcement and child protective services to keep kids safe and help vulnerable families heal. So I know that public safety is important to all of us in this room, including myself. Measure 1 is in total a $1.7 billion tax increase over 30 years. It is one of the largest tax increases in the history of Spokane County. My view, and you'll hear me talk about this tonight, is voters deserve to know what they're buying for $1.7 billion. Unfortunately, the plan lacks detail. I look forward to this conversation.
Thank you. Sheriff?
Well, it turns out when you're talking to politicians, a minute and a half doesn't seem to be a lot. So I will reaffirm what Commissioner Jordan said. The views I'm about to express are my own, not those of Spokane County. So again, thank you, Commissioner Jordan. We've had a lot of conversations amongst each other about how this debate's going to go, and we're going to walk away hopefully informing you all. I will say I am a lifelong resident of Spokane. Currently, most of my children still live here in Spokane. My grandson still lives in Spokane. Growing up in Spokane Valley, having moved to Spokane here when I was 8 months old in 1974, I've seen a lot of change in Spokane. Most of it positive. But recently, Spokane has begun to change. Our crime rates are up, not just in Spokane, but across the state of Washington. There's a lot of things that drive crime rates. And there's a lot of different things we have to do to address them. Measure 1 allows us to fund an underfunded criminal justice system here in the county of Spokane. We have great need. We have plenty of places that we can spend this money to make your homes, your schools, and your businesses safer. We can use this money, and we will use this money to make a significant difference in the way Spokane looks.
Thank you both. Commissioner Jordan, the first question is for you, and you touched on it slightly, but you can expand a little bit more. So, is the proposed tax just for building a new jail? Please explain what Measure 1 does and does not include.
Well, you indicated in your initial description that legally the funds have to be spent for criminal justice, behavioral health, and public safety, including correctional facilities. The building of a new jail is a significant piece of that. The full cost of what that jail will be is, honestly, I think not quite fully fleshed out and understood. The most accurate, complete number I've heard is $540 million. That includes both the cost of construction and also the cost of likely interest payments. It does not yet include the cost of maintaining or operating the jail. That's new cost. So I haven't received full answers to my questions about what is this facility really going to cost. Measure 1's a real potential opportunity, I believe, if we had a well-formulated plan, strong public input, regional collaboration with other cities to make some real progress on legitimate issues of crime and public safety. We all know that everybody deserves to feel safe in Spokane, to be safe. We also know that mental health issues, drug addiction issues that's untreated is fueling a lot of our criminal activity. But I haven't seen a clear plan yet as to what is going to be the specific programs that we invest in with Measure 1 on the program side. That is so important that we don't just build a larger facility, but we change our system. We need a real plan to do that.
So some of the numbers that Commissioner Jordan put forth are correct. It is estimated this will generate about $1.7 billion over 30 years. The estimated payment for the debt service is also about $500 million, which over 30 years, when you do the math, it leaves about $16 million annually in today's dollars that we can spend on programming and services. The way the jail has been designed thus far at about a 5% design build, we won't have to have any additional correctional officers, and because it will be a facility designed to house the number of people that we are going to house, there will be efficiencies in laundry services and things like that.
Thank you. Sheriff Knowles, question for you. How will taxpayers benefit from building a new jail?
So crime rates are driven by a lot of different things. Number one, taxpayers are going to benefit from a new jail simply because the current jail we have has needed significant improvements and overhauls. We have poor supervision models. It is very manpower intensive to supervise the people we have in the jail the way it is built today. The laundry services are not what they need to be, and quite frankly, it's not a great place for the people who are incarcerated there to be, nor is it a great place for the people who are working there to be. The liability from that is passed on to the citizens. We also are lacking accountability in our criminal justice system today. We support programs. I want to have effective programs that keep people from recidivating. But the reality of it is, the programs that we have going today, there is no accountability. There is no negative consequence that motivates people to take part in treatment. Therefore, there's no reason for them to get clean. There's no reason for them to take advantage of mental health services because there's nothing forcing them to do it. An open jail bed is a marvelous motivator. And it's open because they'd rather take part in treatment than be in jail.
Your rebuttal, please.
Yes, I don't disagree that we have needs for investment in our correctional and jail facilities. One of the first things I did when I took office is really go on a listening tour with Commissioner Waldrop of the various actors within the justice system. And I toured the downtown jail and the lower security Geiger Corrections facility. There are structural problems, there's worker safety concerns, but a big part of the overcrowding problem is staffing shortages for correction officers. Corrections officers wrote a letter calling for the delay of Measure 1 because they don't feel they're at the table. If we get a chance to do this the right way, I want our workers to be at the table planning Measure 1 or the next Measure 1 from day one.
Thank you. Next question, Commissioner Jordan. Please explain the recent controversy and litigation over the ballot title for Measure 1.
Yes, it's my understanding, I wasn't personally involved in that, of course, is that a judge in Spokane County made a decision to clarify in the ballot title that correctional facilities are part of what the idea is for Measure 1. I think that's a good thing. I think it just makes us be more transparent for the public. And I did support some language that was very similar to what the judge ruled. So I think it's good. Everybody wants us to be transparent. The challenge that I have with Measure 1 currently is we have such significant needs, and everybody knows we need a plan to address public safety. It's got to include facility upgrades, yes, for sure. But we need to have independent experts review the size of the facility. We need to truly have public input shaping what are the key priorities and investments in this plan. We need to look at having an equity assessment done. That's something that was committed to me in a public meeting as part of this project that's not yet done. So we can not just build a larger facility, but also invest in drug treatment. There's a whole list of ideas that we could include. We can make our system more equitable too, but we need to know, the voters deserve to know, how much do these things cost? Which priorities are actually in the plan? It's a big deal to ask the voters for $1.7 billion, and we need to get more specific.
Thank you. Sheriff Knowles, your rebuttal.
So I also have no issue with Judge Hazel's ruling in the lawsuit. Nobody was trying to hide what some of these dollars were going to be used for. I don't think that was ever the commissioner's intent. So I think the public does have to understand that a major portion of our funding is going to be used to build a jail. However, I also know you all elected us as your representatives to be the people who get into a room and make a decision about what we're going to spend the rest of the money on. It is our obligation. It's our job. The public forums that when we get elected, that's what you've given us the job to do.
Thank you. Next question for Sheriff Knowles. We have heard about the need for a jail for more than a decade. Why is this being proposed now?
Frankly, because I think the political will exists now. I think things at the physical jail itself have deteriorated enough now where it can no longer be denied. And there's a will to stand up to the political backlash that you will get anywhere when you say you want to build a jail. That's what the problem was 10 years ago when it was proposed. There was a strong no new jail initiative, and we're seeing that today. But we cannot continue to ignore what is happening with this critical piece of infrastructure and the criminal justice system as a whole in Spokane County. A couple of statistics, not just the jail. 60% of the people in jail are there on felonies, about give or take a few percentage. That has flip-flopped in the last 10 years. 10 years ago, it was mostly or 60% misdemeanors in the jail. That's flip-flopped. We have the lowest officer per thousand rate in the state, or excuse me, not in the state. The state has the lowest officer per thousand rate in the nation of 1.4 officers per thousand is in Washington State. Spokane County right now, 0.94 officers per thousand. So we're not even at the state average, which is the lowest in the nation. These monies can be used to invest there. We need to invest in more courts because we have courts that are incredibly complicated and understaffed, and we're putting these people in a system that's not equipped to efficiently handle them.
Thank you. Next question for Commissioner Jordan.
Do I get a rebuttal for that?
Oh, yes, excuse me.
Okay.
Please, excuse me. Yes.
Thank you. If you look at the total package of Measure 1, it's $1.7 billion tax increase overall. The jail is about $550, however it comes out. But the large majority of the funds, there's currently not a specific budgeted, detailed plan for what those funds will support. And if we've been working on this for 10 years, we should have more detail than that. I really think we need to take the time to do this important work the right way.
Thank you. So now, Commissioner Jordan, the next question is for you. What happens if Measure 1 does not pass? What is Plan B?
Well, I have heard other commissioners talk about, if it doesn't pass, we'll come back and try again. I think, unfortunately, there's been a little bit of an attitude among some of my colleagues who I respect and work with that, essentially just please give us the money and we'll figure out the details later. I just think that's fundamentally backwards. I think we need to invest in the planning up front. I've heard my colleagues say that some of the lack of detailed planning is just because that's expensive to do. And so they want to wait until after the measure passes to do more planning. At the same time, the commissioners in a 3-2 vote did vote to spend $200,000 on a public relations or public education campaign to educate the voters about Measure 1. I think those are dollars that should have been spent in the planning phase so that we can really come and present a strong plan. I've got lots of ideas. I've shared these with the other commissioners. We could staff up our mental health first responders, expand our crisis stabilization center. We could have expanded drug court, which is an evidence-based program to reduce repeat offenders re-victimizing people. But again, let's put it in the plan. Let's budget it. Let's give the voters a clear package.
Sheriff Knoll, your rebuttal.
So my rebuttal is this. We would not receive a single dollar from this if this were to pass in November. We would not receive a single dollar until April. That gives us, what if I'm doing my math correctly, 6 or 7 months off the top of my head for us to, and we should be doing this anyway. Whether this measure passes, we have to do this as elected officials. We have to sit down in a room and hammer this out about exactly what we're going to invest in. We have good programs. We have good diversion programs. But we have to be realistic and understand that even our most successful programs, only 40% of the people complete the programming. We have to be realistic about what we do with the rest of them. And that includes a jail.
Thank you. Sheriff Knowles, questions for you. How has the City of Spokane been involved in Measure 1? Are there agreements with other jurisdictions regarding the jail and other funding that is authorized by this measure?
So I think it's critical for citizens to understand why Spokane County gets 60% of this tax revenue, where the municipalities only get 40%. The state of Washington gives money to the county, and the reason we get 60% by statute is because it is the county's responsibility to have a jail and prosecute felony crimes. Misdemeanors all belong to the municipalities. So when somebody from the city of Spokane is booked into the Spokane County Jail on a misdemeanor, a fee is charged to the city of Spokane for that, or any other municipality that uses the jail. The county, however, is obligated to pay for the prosecution of the felonies, housing prisoners who are, or inmates who are, accused of felonies and whatnot. So that's why we're getting the bulk of the funding. However, what I think the beauty of this measure is, it allows local control of those funds. I don't think it's the county's place to tell the city of Spokane or the city of Liberty Lake what they are going to do with those 0.2%. If they want more police officers on their street, they can do it. If they want to invest in the programs that Commissioner Jordan just talked about, they are free to do it. Their citizens get to decide what to do with that money. The county and the statute do not dictate that for them.
Thank you. Your rebuttal, Commissioner.
Thank you. And if you look at Measure 1, it's about $1 billion for the county over 30 years and about $700 million for the various cities and towns. I have heard an attitude from some of my colleagues that, if the city hasn't come up with a plan, that's their problem. I don't agree with that. I think the county is the regional leader. The cities deserve the regional leaders to step up and engage in a conversation. What can we invest in together with shared priorities? I understand that you can't force them, but we really should try collaboration. The Crisis Stabilization Center is a great example where the city, the county, and the state came together around a good idea. Why can't we do that with Measure 1? Whether it's detox centers that are going to help the whole county, we need to do our homework before we go to the voters.
Thank you. So, Commissioner Jordan, this is your question, and it kind of ties into what you were saying, so great timing on this. How will Measure 1 address the mental health and drug treatment needs in our community?
Well, I want to give some credit to the staff who are in the room, who I know have worked really hard on this and have brought some good ideas to the table about what a new facility could look like. There could be some additional classroom space in new facilities. I think that's a good thing. So I'm not here to say everything's bad. I'm saying we need to get the plan together in its entirety before we go to the people. I would like to see some of those extra dollars used for the programs I identified. Judicial capacity is a good one for speeding up trials. Mental health. First responders, we know, have been severely understaffed. How can we keep those folks on the job, diverting people into mental health treatment instead of jail, if that's what they really need? I do believe accountability is critically important as well, but with drug court and mental health court, as an example, those are tough programs. You have court orders you got to follow, and if you don't stay on it, you can go to jail. But at the same time, it helps people heal and recover, because that's what we really want to see, so that they don't offend again. They've got the help they need to be healthy. There's a study I saw that says that graduates of drug court had an 11% recidivism rate after 2 years. Those who were eligible for drug court but didn't participate were more in the 50% reoffending range. These are the types of effective programs that allow for accountability and for health, but they're not clearly defined in the package yet.
Thank you, Sheriff Knowles.
So I agree with a lot of what Commissioner Jordan just said. I don't know of an elected official now who does not believe that we need programming to help lift people who break our laws up and help them change behavior. We have to do it. What I will tell you is, and there's an important caveat, Commissioner Jordan said if they don't abide by the program, they get sent back to jail. The problem is right now they don't, because we don't have the space. 10 cars lined up outside of our jail waiting to book people because the booking area was full. It has to change. It's 5 years before we open up a new jail if the funding is authorized right now.
Thank you. Kind of continuing on a similar theme, Sheriff Knowles, there are programs in place such as diversion and community court that we talked about that reduce the need for jail beds. Can we invest more in those alternatives to incarceration and reduce the need for a new jail?
I think that the answer to that is yes, but when people talk about diversion and the reduction for the need for jail beds, they act like it eliminates the need. And that's just disingenuous. The fact of the matter is, as our population has increased, as some state policies have changed the criminal justice system, the number of prisoners that we're housing that should be in the state prison system that are now in our local jail, we have capacity issues. It's just true. We have to be able to provide support for people, make sure that they get all of the tools they need to succeed and be successful and re-enter our society. But we cannot do it at the expense of the law-abiding citizens, and that's what we see now. There's no accountability in the system. Some of it is that we don't have enough jail space to house them, but we're also not providing the programming in the jail that we could. I would love to see a jail, and I will strongly advocate for a jail when people are booked in and they're under the influence of fentanyl, that we have strong medical support to help those people detox. We don't have that right now. No jails have that right now. And I would love for us to be able to offer drug treatment for people who are in our jails. We don't have the space for it right now or the funding.
Thank you.
On the space issue, I just want to make it clear. I think it's really important for the voters to understand that defendants charged with violent crimes and felonies are not being released from the jail due to a lack of space. The judges made that very clear in the Spokesman Review recently. Our jail, I checked the end of August report. It was at 815 inmates. I think it was at 850 something yesterday. We have had 1,000 or so in 2018. We've had 950 in 2019. But at the same time, I know we have overcrowding challenges, but we have been higher before. And some of this idea of lack of accountability really goes to legislative issues that can be talked about with the legislature around sentencing, but we got to focus on our plan and what we can do.
Thank you. Next question, back to you, Commissioner Jordan. Most articles about the criminal justice system talk about the systemic issues related to crime, including childhood trauma and mental illness. How would Measure 1 funding help prevent people from ending up in the system in the first place? And is there a strategy to prevent incarceration in the plan?
I'm not sure is the answer. There could be. And there should be. I want to emphasize, too, that, I have held people accountable personally through the court system who harm children. And through the court system, I have helped a lot of those same people, and not me personally, but the social workers and law enforcement officers I work with, get access to drug treatment, family counseling, and oftentimes, not every time, and we know it takes some time sometimes, people can change their lives. They can become healthy, functioning adults, and I'm concerned that the programming piece, which is so important to actually change the system, has been put kind of on the back burner in the plan so far, and it needs to be an entire package. So I think we really could do better with new facilities and programs And I hate to be repetitive, but we need to know which ones they are, how much they cost, not just so that the voters know what they're buying, but so that we have confidence it can be delivered. I think that's critical, that we don't give people false hope with the vague ideas of we're going to do good things with the money. Tell the voters clearly what they're buying so they can have confidence the system will be better.
Thank you. Sheriff Knowles?
So the design that's been put forward for the jail does delineate those things, what the space will be used for, the fact that it's going to be expandable in the future. If our programming isn't as successful as we want it to be, we can make improvements and increase the size of the jail. It's all scalable, and it's all built on very solid estimations of what our needs going to be in the future. We know what programs we've used, what's successful, and we know how to expand them. Don't listen to the narrative that says we're going to be able to offer these programs and there's going to be some magic pill that's going to get everybody to change behavior and not reoffend. It's not true. In fact, most people who take part in these programs fail.
Thank you. Sheriff Knowles, back to you for a question. According to data collected by Eastern Washington University's Institute for Public Policy and Analysis, in 2018, Spokane's violent crimes, particularly murder and aggravated assault, spiked to 4.8 per 1,000 residents. This was one of the highest increases in violent crime since 1995. The violent crime rate in Spokane has continued to be higher than that for Washington State, currently at 4 compared to 3.8 for the state. The question is, do you believe having additional jail capacity would help drive down this rate?
That is a very complex statistic to tackle because there are so many different factors that drive crime rates. I think a lot of people here would disagree, and agree that our drug policy in the state of Washington and really in American society is driving our violent crime rates. I think the Blake decision offered a unique challenge to this state, and we didn't handle it very well. And I don't know that we're in a position right now where we're going to be able to handle it well. I believe that us being able to hold people accountable, interrupt their cycle of mental health disorder, interrupt their cycle of substance use disorder, long enough to stabilize them and get them connected to services can be done with a new correctional facility. And it's not a lock them up and throw them away the key. It's not. That's not what I'm saying. I don't think that's what anybody wants. But we also know we have to be able to interrupt people to get them to change behavior and get them on a path to success. And I think that's where a jail can be one component of that. And yeah, we need to work on state legislation. We need to get our state legislators to help us keep our community safe by maybe changing some of our policies, our sentencing guidelines, things like that. But I think that's how the jail touches that question.
Thank you. Commissioner Jordan.
I don't have a lot to add other than just to reiterate that folks charged with those kinds of crimes are not being let out of the jail due to space. So I think that's just important for people to recognize. I agree there needs to be accountability for those who abuse and harm others, no doubt about it. I appreciate that when the Blake issue came up, Sheriff Knowles and I both signed on to a letter calling for that to be the compromise bill in Olympia to be passed. We also acknowledged it wasn't perfect, and I fully expect that the legislature will continue to wrestle with these issues. But Measure 1 is about, has the county put forward a viable plan to do all in its power on those issues? And I think that we need to do better than a blank check.
Thank you. Let's switch it up a little bit, and I'll insert your questions to each other at this point. So, Commissioner Jordan, the first question goes to you. What specific programming do you propose implementing that is proven to improve public safety and also reduce jail population? What are the recidivism rates for the programming? And how do you plan to deal with those who refuse to participate or fail to complete their programs?
Well, I'll just repeat what I said in the public meeting. Mental health co-responders. I think we both agree those help divert people into treatment. Crisis Stabilization Center expansion. I think we agree on that. Intake and Release Center is something that is broadly agreed upon within the county and was attempted. There needs to be more work on the logistics and the follow-through of that. Supported Release is a program that the county is piloting right now. Expanding drug court and mental health court. Those are the stats I provided earlier about lowering recidivism. I think we need more judges, public defenders, and prosecutors. How many is a question that we need to work on. And then reentry. And I will give our staff credit for identifying breaking barriers as a program that's been shown to be successful. My concern is we've only really talked about adding several counselors, and we need to add more detail to the entire package. So that's a lot of ideas for you. We need to hear the public's voice about what they see as the biggest needs. That's also something that is missing, and I hope when we get a chance to do this right, we can send out surveys. We can engage people with lived experience. We can bring the corrections officers to the table, bring the experts to the table, and do the best evidence-based practices that we can afford.
Thank you, Sheriff Knowles.
So in rebuttal to that, number one, Commissioner Jordan, that sounds like the start of a plan. So what would prevent us from sitting down and saying, this is about how much each one of these is going to cost? That's not going to take years. That should take a couple weeks at the best. That's what we get elected to do. So you and I have had this conversation before, and I've challenged you, like, let's get in a room and do it, because we can't wait anymore for any of this. And I do want to rebut one thing. It is not that corrections staff and corrections leadership have not been consulted. In fact, Mike Sparber, who has worked in our jail almost his entire career, has been instrumental in coming up with this plan, and the leadership. I am unaware whether the line level has been or not.
Thank you. Sheriff Knowles, this is the question from Commissioner Jordan to you. By a 3-2 vote, the county commissioners decided to spend $200,000 of taxpayer funds on a public relations campaign to educate the voters about Measure 1. Additionally, placing the measure on the November 2023 countywide ballot in an off-year election has cost hundreds of thousands of additional dollars. Question, do you believe those funds would have been better invested to develop a more detailed, thoughtful plan for facility upgrades and criminal justice investments to present to the community?
So I will say, and maybe many of you business owners know, PR campaigns are really expensive. So, I mean, we spend that much just trying to recruit every year, so that doesn't surprise me. I do know some of the hesitation with the county commissioners going past the 5% design plans, because architecture is really expensive, and I don't mean to offend the architects in the room, but you could spend $500,000 just designing this. So is it necessary? I think spending $200,000 to educate the public and get something out before the voters is not that expensive. It seems like a big dollar amount to all of us, but that kind of money is what it costs these days to get word out. It's just that expensive.
Thank you. Commissioner Jordan?
Well, I'd want to go back to your challenge. The challenge is time. And that is why Commissioner, and open minds, frankly, Commissioner Waldrop and I did bring forward. We took the approach of, let's give this a chance. Let's listen. Let's provide ideas. When we realized that the county was not likely to come forward with a well-rounded, detailed package in time, we brought forward a resolution to delay Measure 1, not indefinitely, but for 9 months, so that we could take the time to really listen to the public and provide the details. Unfortunately, as you know, the 3-2 vote, the commissioners not only said no, they said, you can't bring this up again. We got voted to be silenced, essentially, from bringing up the ideas that I'm suggesting to you today. So we can do better.
Thank you. All right, back to the questions from our club. Commissioner Jordan, this one's for you. The voter's guide indicates that 60% of tax revenue collected would be retained by Spokane County and 40% would be distributed to cities and towns within Spokane County on a per capita basis. Who will oversee Measure 1 funds are distributed to the various municipalities in the county, and who will oversee distributing the funds within each municipality?
I think the technical answer is for the county money, the county commissioners get to decide how that's distributed. And with the cities and towns, it would be their local city council and mayors, however they make their decisions within their municipality.
Great.
I'll stop there.
Wonderful. Sheriff Knowles.
Well, if I'm understanding the question correctly, I think Commissioner Jordan is correct. But I think as a technical who makes sure it's distributed, I believe that's the county auditor and the county treasurer who makes sure that monies is brought in and distributed, to where legally it's supposed to. But as far as its ultimate disposition, I believe it's up to the legislative branch of those governments.
Thank you. So, Sheriff Knowles, this is for you. Also, the measure does not seem to be specific about how funds will be used beyond the voter guide saying 1/3 of revenues collected must be spent for criminal justice purposes, including building and improving jails or correctional facilities. The remaining 2/3 of any revenues collected must be spent for criminal justice, public safety, and behavioral health. What assurances are there that the funds will be used accordingly?
So those guidelines, those are legally what we are bound to spend those dollars on. The county has proposed that at least $540 million of that will be used to pay the debt service for the construction of a new jail. There is a lot of need in other places. I think we can quickly come up with just exactly where we need to invest those dollars, where reinvesting in programs we know are already successful, working with expanding those. But there are so many places and so many challenges that we are going to face in the next 30 years revolving around criminal justice. I talked earlier about our officers per thousand. I told you that there's about a $16.5 million delta with what's obligated for the jail and what we anticipate generating in sales tax for just the county's revenue. If I added the number of deputies at today's cost to bring us up to what the state's officer per thousand is, it would spend that $16 million and cost us another $3. It seems like a lot of money, but at what public safety is beginning to cost us, it's not as much as you think. And our need is great. We need to add courtrooms. We need more prosecuting attorneys. I've said this in other groups. Our prosecuting attorneys, sorry.
Thank you.
Can I add my minute at some point?
Absolutely. You can. Would you like to?
Wild card.
Your wild card now?
Please, because I'm long-winded. A couple stats. Our prosecuting attorney's office receives 3,500 new felony referrals in 2022. Prior to COVID, it was 5,000. They have 46 deputy prosecuting attorneys to handle those felony cases. We have 13, or we're adding a 13th courtroom, hopefully in the near future. We've got to figure out a way to fund it. But we have 12 superior court judges and courtrooms. 2 of those are used for civil trials, one's used for juvenile, and another one's doing first appearance, which means we have a capacity of about 350 trials a year. Our system has been left unchecked, and as far as there's way more coming in than we are equipped to deal with, and it's expensive to fix those problems. This money can be used to fix it.
Perfect ending. Thank you, Commissioner Jordan.
I do agree there's a lot of needs. I think the question is, how many judges, how many public defenders, how many prosecutors? Back to the question about the assurances. I agree. The law says you've got to spend it on those 3 topics, and I've heard that used not by Sheriff Knowles but by some others as a kind of defense to say, well, of course we have a plan. We have to spend it on criminal justice, behavioral health, and public safety. I don't think that's specific enough to say, well, we'll follow the law. It seems kind of like a school district saying, well, we want to come for a school levy and we're going to spend it on education. Well, please say a little more. I think it would be a reasonable response. Is it going to be new school buildings? Is it going to be raising teacher pay, library? The voters expect to know more.
Thank you. So, Commissioner Jordan, this question's to you now. You've kind of touched on it a little bit, both of you, but specifically, how were the costs and design of the new jail derived? Has any outside expertise been used to determine what is needed for our community?
To me?
Yes.
Well, I think that we have had some really smart county staff who have been working on the design, and as I said, there's some good ideas baked into that design. My specific concern about the facility is more about the right sizing. How many beds do we really need? And that's where I start to run into some difficulty with the current plan. I really believe that any new jail facilities need to be right-sized for our community. They need to be reasonably sized, sufficiently sized for sure, but also affordable. And I think that needs to be informed by outside experts who are professional jail forecasters. The county has hired folks to do that in the past. They provided a report a couple years ago, and it had a lower forecast in it for the number of beds needed than the current forecast that we're using. And unfortunately, my feeling is that the majority of the commissioners have disregarded that report because it doesn't seem to match what they want to do. So what I said is, let's just bring in those outside experts for a conversation to make sure that we've got the math right, because while our population is expected to increase, if a large chunk of the new population in Spokane is senior citizens who are committing less crimes, we should be taking that into account as we look out to the future to build it to a reasonable, affordable size.
Sheriff Knowles.
So my understanding, and I hope I portray this accurately, the estimate for the jail size was developed off of a tool implemented by the National Institute of Corrections. Hardly a special interest group, and I know one of the outside experts, Commissioner Jordan, has spoken about in the past is Justice for All. It's a special interest group that is not who we need to be using to safely build a jail that's got enough capacity to keep our community safe as a first priority instead of just no new jail beds. National Institute of Corrections, he didn't even, when they built the model, they didn't even use the high end, they didn't use the low end. They took the middle range of what it would say we would need given our anticipated population growth for the next 30 years.
Thank you. Sheriff Knowles, this question is for you, and it kind of has been touched on a little bit, but maybe a little further here. Some people believe there is a large gap between what a new jail will cost and how much Measure 1 will raise. So how much, you've talked about how much it is, but is there a gap there, and can you address that?
Yeah, there absolutely is, and I think we both discussed what that delta looks like. It's roughly about $16 million a year that we will be able to use to invest in programming, all of the things that are absolutely worth investing in going forward. At some point, we're going to have to invest in more police officers for our community. I've seen research papers, I've got it sitting right here, where it shows for every 10 police officers a community adds, it reduces a homicide by 1. This is causal research, and it is double that number in black communities. For every 10 police officers you hire, it reduces a homicide by 2. This study also cites that it has shown strong correlation that the more police officers you have in the street, the less crime you have, both violent and property crimes. We are going to have to invest in police. This money can be used to do it. We have to meet people where they're at. We have to give them an opportunity to change. That's what the correctional system is for. We've underfunded it. We can no longer afford to underfund it, and we have to have a motivating factor to get people to participate in treatment. An open jail bed is what that is. I want to be like Sheriff Myers in Kittitas County, where he has 100 open jail beds today.
Thank you. Commissioner Jordan.
Well, I think, again, my question is how many officers then can we buy with Measure 1? I don't disagree that we have a shortage and we need to be working on that. We're having trouble recruiting them, of course, right? So there's layers to that. I don't disagree. Just real quick on the gap, I suppose, or what the facility costs. The current plan is to add between, I think, 500 and something and 600 and something new beds, depending on where you start. And that averages out to about $1 million per new jail bed. That's a lot of money. And so my point is, if you don't like the JFA group, the county paid these folks, by the way, to be their expert. If they were a special interest group, I don't know why we would be paying them in the first place. They're actually well respected. Let's bring in a different expert.
Thank you. Next question to you, Commissioner Jordan. We hear about the idea of catch and release, where people are booked into jail and then released either on bail or because of overcrowding. Can you address how crowded the jail currently is and strategies to address this? And then what happens if the jail is not built?
Yeah, I did address some of the numbers around who's in the jail earlier. I just want to say I completely sympathize with the frustration that is in the community with some of these misdemeanor charges who are then let out the next day or not booked at all because it's deemed to be a lower level charge. Again, it's important to identify that those charged with felonies and violent offenses are not being released due to space. And I think Sheriff Knowles and I both may agree that because of the way the presumption of innocence works and some of our state laws, even if we had a jail that was twice as big as it is today, some of those lower level misdemeanors, or many of them, even if they were booked in the jail, are going to be let out the next day. And if we disagree with that presumption of innocence, we need to talk to the legislature about that. But with Measure 1, I think the question is, what have we put into this plan that is within our power to invest in the programs that we know reduce recidivism and help prevent people from reoffending? I'm just going to repeat that we've had a recommendation from the Blueprint for Reform to expand drug court for many years, and the most recent report said that we haven't made progress on that. I'm hopeful. I'm having some conversations with folks in the system that are positive on that topic, but we know things like that actually help people get over their addiction and stop reoffending.
Thank you. Sheriff Knowles.
So I think it's important to know that part of the challenge with expanding drug court when there is effectively no drug charges that you could actually arrest people for and charge them with for the last 2 years makes it tough to expand it. But yes, I agree with Commissioner Jordan. We need to expand it. But again, reality of it is 40% success rate, 60% failure rate. What do we do with the 60%? And now that we can arrest people for possession of controlled substance again, which is probably the most challenging problem we have in our community, doesn't more jail bed space give us an opportunity to interrupt people's behavior and get them on the right path to treatment? It does. And we have to have that capacity. I know it. I have somebody in my family who's dealing with this issue.
Thank you. Sheriff Knowles, this question is for you. How many Spokane County jail beds are provided to other jurisdictions, such as federal prisoners? Would reducing the use of jail beds by others reduce the need for a new facility?
I guess if it's a strictly numbers exercise, yes, but these are people who are being tried in federal court, which is just across the street. And if we didn't contract beds to them, they would have to go somewhere else, and it would increase cost to us as taxpayers just at the federal level. It makes sense for us to house federal prisoners, and the federal government pays us for that. We also, from time to time, do house state prisoners on state DOC holds, although that has been greatly reduced because of our capacity issues. The other thing you have to keep in mind is a lot of our jail capacity is less than what it used to be because of the way we have to classify prisoners now. And a lot of the people that we're actually housing can't be housed out at Geiger anymore. That's why Geiger at one point had the capacity for 300 plus people, and now we only have 150, 160 people out there on average because the other people don't meet the criteria to safely house them out there, let alone that building is probably going to physically fall down at some point in the future. But there's those kinds of things that affect our capacity, and this new jail proposal addresses them. It allows us to do the things that we would love to do and used to be able to do successfully when this jail wasn't overcrowded.
Thank you. Commissioner Jordan.
I think it's about 125 for external agencies that are in the jail. I think it's about 90 or so that are federal marshal holds. So that's just, I think, the most complete number I have. And I think I don't disagree that it sounds like there are more serious crimes being committed among that felony population, statistically speaking. But my understanding from the reports that I've received is that several wings of Geiger, the low security jail, have been closed due to lack of officers. We're down 30 to 40 officers. We don't have enough detention officers to supervise everybody out at Geiger. So that's a critical piece as well. And that's why I think we really need to take the time to analyze what we really need for the size.
Thank you. And final question before we then move into your closing statements. So to you, Commissioner Jordan, first. The Spokane County website for Measure 1 says, quote, "It is important that the community understands the current and anticipated issues with the Spokane County Jail and Geiger Corrections Center, along with how Measure Number 1 can address these needs. To help the public better understand how Measure 1 can address the current needs of the Spokane County Jail and Geiger Corrections Center, community meetings will be held. Dates and times to be determined." When can we expect these community meetings to be held with the election around the corner?
I'm not sure is the honest answer. And this was part of the issue that Commissioner Waldrop and I brought up in July when we pushed for delay, is we really need to be able to say that we went out and we listened to the voters about what they see as their top needs in the system. It's not enough just to educate them and to bring around presentations and say this is what we want to do. We need to hear their voices. I understand we have a role in that, right, as elected officials, but when school districts go out to run ballot measures, they've got sophisticated software that can survey thousands of parents and get their top priorities considered. When STA's done ballot measures, they've got a robust way that they go out and listen to the voters and adjust based on that. So I think that public input is a critical missing piece. We've got ballots coming out in a month. And I don't know that we have time. And in fact, Commissioner Waldrop and I have been told there will be no more modifying Measure 1 at this late point in the game. So I wish we had more time. I hope that we will have more time. And I think that in the future, if this ballot measure is not successful, I would hope we can do it the right way.
Thank you. Sheriff Knowles.
So I wish you could see my calendar for the next 6 weeks. I have been, without even really being asked, Commissioner French and Commissioner Cuney, they have filled up my schedule with community meetings coming up over the next 6 weeks. That, in addition to that, we have had many other opportunities to talk to the community about Measure 1. I think it's important to say I can't, as a sheriff, advocate, or as a county employee, advocate for it. The only role I can have with the public is to educate. When I am out talking to voters and constituents, that is the only role I can take with Measure 1. Again, I think it's important to understand.
Thank you. Commissioner Jordan, your 1.5-minute closing, please.
Well, I can vouch that I see Sheriff Knowles all over the place, so I know he's very busy, and I appreciate him being active in the community and encouraging his deputies to be very connected with the community. So my closing?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to say I respect where Sheriff Knowles is coming from. I appreciate the civil discussion that we've had today. I think it's important to recognize that we all understand crime, public safety, critically important. We have an opioid epidemic going on. We've got to find ways to provide help for people with addiction, with mental health challenges. We've got to find ways to reduce repeat offenders from victimizing people. There's so much that we could do. Please make us do it the right way. Make us provide you a clear plan so that you know what you're buying for $1.7 billion. There are needs in the system for facilities, for our workers, for victims of crime. We really should be able to do better. I just believe we need the time, the planning, the work, the listening, the equity assessments. This is doable, but it's got to be a message from the voters that we hear the needs, but we want you to go back to the drawing board and give us the plan that we deserve.
Thank you. Sheriff Knowles, one and a half minute.
I too appreciate the opportunity to come out here and talk to you all about this. It's funny, there's been a lot of conversation between Commissioner Jordan and I about how we wanted this to go off, because these tend to end up being adversarial, and it's been anything but. So thank you. This has been, I hope, educational to everybody. I think a couple points that I'd like to conclude with. We have time. Commissioners Jordan and Waldrop asked for 9 more months to have this on a ballot again. There's a lot of reasons that would be disadvantageous to just getting a vote together and to get good, solid participation. We have the time before a single dollar rolls in to come up with a plan and put dollar signs to the plan that Commissioner Jordan just articulated very effectively. I hope that you as voters, when you hear about the programming that we're doing, and we talked about several programs today, and I have a list in here. If it wasn't dark in here, I could read the list to you, but my eyes are not what they should be. We have a list of programs that are successful. As voters, you elected us because you trust us to do what's best for you. We are going to give you safer homes, safer schools, safer businesses. This gives us the funding to attack this problem of public safety with an all-of-the-above approach. School boards, fire districts, they always come asking for money, and they never give exact detail like they're asking for.
Thank you. On behalf of Rotary Club 21, thank you both for being here. Commissioner Jordan and Sheriff Knowles, can we give them a round of applause?